Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Handford, and my wife, Danae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. Before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HandfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HandfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HandfordCapital.com.
Welcome to the Tough Decisions podcast. This is our special Friday episode. Danae is a little under the weather today, so I'm going to go ahead and take it today. I want to go through some of the tools that we use on the podcast to make it happen, and then also some tools that we use in our business that will hopefully help you to make your life easier as an entrepreneur. The first thing is a software that's called Contactually. And you can go to contactually.com and look at this software. And it is a CRM, a customer relationship management software. And it's really geared towards the real estate industry. So, with HandfordCapital.com and the multifamily real estate investments that we're putting together for investors, it helps us to be able to stay in contact with multiple people like the lenders and the brokers and our investors and property managers and attorneys and all kinds of different people that are part of our team that we want to make sure we're constantly staying in contact with. And so that's called Contactually. It can actually be used for other businesses as well. And I like it because they actually break things down into what are called buckets and also tags. So you can tag somebody to remind you kind of where you met them or how you heard about them or where their current focus is and things like that. And then you can also put them in buckets. And the buckets are really important because the buckets allow you to be able to make sure that you're always following up with them and you're always having that constant communication with them. And that constant communication right now in this world of noise is extremely important. And so you could have each bucket be a different follow-up time frame or making sure you have a certain touch with them. So you could have a bucket that is just like a general networking bucket. And you want to make sure that you have, a contact with certain people for, 60 or 90 days. And you can connect in your email as well as your phone. And so it knows when you contact these people and it will reset the counter. And so once you send out an email to somebody, it'll reset that. And then it'll make sure that if you haven't contacted them in 90 days, it'll put it on your little dashboard to say, hey, you haven't spoken to this person in 90 days. You might want to follow up with them. And that just kind of prompts you to be able to shoot out an email or pick up the phone and call them or shoot them a text message to kind of see, how they're doing, checking in with them and just having that constant communication with them. And so that one is called Contactually. We use it for our real estate, but we also use it for keeping up with our podcast because I'll send out an email to an entrepreneur and invite them onto the podcast. And, I have a bucket for podcast people that we've emailed, podcast emailed. And if I haven't heard back from them within 7 days in that bucket, it alerts me to follow back up with them. And then every 7 days, I'm following back up with them until they say, hey, yes, I would like to be on your podcast. And so then they get moved to a different bucket called podcast scheduled. And then once they come into the podcast, they get moved to another bucket that's podcast prior guest. And it allows me to be able to stay connected with them. One of the other things it does is it connects with a software that we use called MailChimp. I know many of you might have heard that before, but if you go to MailChimp.com, it is an email platform that allows you to send emails to an email list. And so when you put people, you can connect MailChimp in the back end, what's called an integration into Contactually. And when you put a certain person in a bucket within Contactually, it will automatically put them inside of an email list within MailChimp, so that they can always be in communication with you whenever you're sending out certain things. And so we have one that's called Investor-Send Deals. And so when we talk to an investor or meet an investor and they're interested in wanting to see some of the deal flow that we have, we will contextually put them in that bucket, and it automatically updates our MailChimp and puts them in our email list, so we don't have to kind of go back and forth and do two of them. The other piece of software that we use is Zapier, okay? Zapier is a phenomenal software, and it connects basically hundreds, if not thousands, of other pieces of software together. And so we use that when we are scheduling somebody for the podcast. So instead of me having to like email back and forth with all of our guests to say, hey, we have this time available and that time available, we use a different software called Calendly. In Calendly, we can basically set our schedule for our podcast recording days throughout the month, and then we send that schedule link out to our potential guests. They can go on there and see what availability we have on the days that we're doing podcasts. And they'll pick that time spot. They'll fill out a couple of questions about, some of their background and kind of qualifying them. And then it connects to Zapier. And what Zapier does is it actually connects our recording platform. And so we use Zoom for our recording platform, Zoom, Zoom. And so whenever somebody goes in there and schedules an appointment, Zapier connects our Calendly to our Zoom platform, and it also updates on my calendar on my Outlook. So Zapier connects my Outlook account, my Calendly, and my Zoom. So whenever somebody schedules on Calendly, Zapier says, okay, we have an appointment here. It goes to Zoom and says, I need to schedule a meeting. It schedules the meeting for me. And then it comes back to Zapier, and Zapier says, okay, I'm going to send an email out to Dan, Danae, as well as the guests. And so we get 3 emails sent out automatically to let us know. And then Calendly comes in and says, I'm going to go ahead and add an appointment on your calendar. And so I'm connected all of those together, and so that my calendar is always updated and we always know where we are and where we stand when we have those podcast recording days. So it's a really nice, seamless process. It allows us not to have a virtual assistant that has to schedule for us. And so really we have 2 main virtual assistants. One is our podcast editor, and he manages pretty much everything with the podcast. From the time we record it to the time it actually comes to you, he is managing that entire process. And then he works alongside our podcast show notes writer and manages her to make sure that she is submitting the information to him on a timely basis so that the notes and the audio goes out at the same time. And they work really well together. And so from our standpoint, we don't have to have somebody like scheduling it and then in the back end and all this other kind of stuff. It's really 2 people that are managing this daily podcast, and they do a phenomenal job. And so those are the platforms we're using right now: Contactually, MailChimp, Zapier, Calendly, and then Zoom. And then one other software that we use is called Basecamp. Now, Basecamp I'm not using for our podcast. Basecamp we use as a project management software for our various businesses. And so when we want to implement a certain process or project or create something in the business, we use Basecamp as that project management software. We also use it for some of our virtual events that we're going to be putting on coming up in January that is specifically around some of the multifamily investing stuff that we're doing. And we're also considering doing a virtual event for entrepreneurs. More of that will come out soon as we decide some of the dates and the times and things like that for it. But Basecamp is very good for bringing your team together to make sure that you're on the same page on the various tasks that you have at hand. And then, of course, social media-wise, the 2 social media platforms that we use the most is Facebook and LinkedIn. I mean, everybody knows about Facebook and everybody's on that. Well, the hidden thing I think in social media is LinkedIn. And a lot of people will say that's more just for your business to business. And, I would say majority it is more business to business, but there's also some B2C stuff that goes on there as well. But LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, I would suggest and recommend that you do get on LinkedIn, because there is a lot of good quality people on LinkedIn. And as a matter of fact, on our podcast, that's where we find the majority of our successful entrepreneurs that we interview is from LinkedIn. We can go on there and search for entrepreneur and look at their profile, kind of see what their business success is. And so both Facebook and LinkedIn are very important tools that we use in our business every day. And I actually have even 2 of my investors that I've met on Facebook that we've built a relationship on Facebook, and they've invested in some of our projects. And so Yes, you can find, business, whether you're trying to find B2C or B2B, you can find business on Facebook, and you can also find it on LinkedIn. Now, one last tool that we use that we just started using recently, like literally in the past month, we've started using this. And we're starting to use this for our real estate, but it can be applied to more than just real estate, just like the Contactually software could be. This one is called Airtable. And you just go to airtable.com and you'll see what this is. It's an advanced spreadsheet platform that allows you to keep track of multiple things, and it also allows you to drop files inside of a spreadsheet so you can be more organized. And so I'll kind of give you an example of how we're using it and why we needed it. So we have four main people on our team. We have our financial people, which do the underwriting, and there's two of those. And those two people, they also do a lot of the asset management and the financial analyzing from the due diligence. And then the second person is the person who's doing some of the boots on the ground for, going and looking at some of the real estate projects that we're doing and seeing if we want to actually put an offer on the deals. And then, of course, myself, I'm working with a lot of the investors and putting the marketing together for the projects. And we were all over the place with all the documents. We have, an offering memorandum that comes in from the broker. We have a T12. We have a rent roll. We have, a CapEx project budgets. And there's just so many documents that we had, and they were all kind of all over the place. And we were trying to keep it all on Dropbox, but, some things work better on Dropbox versus others. And it was just really a kind of a nightmare. And so we were trying to find a tool or a resource that allows us to be able to become more organized with our process. And Airtable is the resource that we found, and it is very customizable. And it's very nice to be able to have a software like that that allows you to be able to stay, connected and organized. And so we have really now 5 different what are called bases inside of Airtable. One is our deal flow base, which allows us to keep track, like I said, of all those documents in one place. And as the projects are moving through different stages, we can change the status of those particular properties so that at any given time, we know exactly where we are in that process of underwriting or, maybe a pending, writing of an LOI, a letter of intent, and then also whether we're in due diligence and various things like that. So it just helps our team to be able to stay more organized when it comes to the deal flow. We also have one for market research. So each market that we're in, as far as real estate, whenever we find an article or some sort of resource or report, instead of just, trying to save it on our bookmark and on our links, we now have a base within Airtable that allows us to keep track of all of that market research and have it compiled into one place. And it makes it easier for us, especially for me, as I'm creating the marketing pieces to be able to present to investors and have all that information in one place. And of course, we have one base called Investor Relations that allows us to keep track of each project that we have in the works and how much money we are raising for each one of our deals. And it also allows us to be able to have that constant communication with those investors. And then we have one that we have for a partner. It's called Partnership Expenses. And so obviously with our partnership, there's going to be expenses that are going to need to be shared. And so we have that in there to allow us to be able to approve or not approve of different expenses that each one of the partners might incur while working with the real estate business that we have. And then, of course, my last one I kind of created was kind of a small one, just called my podcast archive. It's all of the podcasts that I've been interviewed on and the links to them and, the emails of all the different podcast hosts and stuff like that I've been on their podcast. And so it allows me to kind of keep track of all of that and know where all the links are. And I actually can download the MP3 of the audio of that podcast and drop the entire audio file inside of Airtable. So I have an archive at all times of the audio. Even if they decide to, get rid of their podcast, I still have the audio. So it's really nice. It's just a nice place to be able to consolidate, a lot of you and become more organized with your processes, whether you're in real estate or whether you're doing another type of business. It's just really, really a nice and unique tool that has those advanced spreadsheets. Well, that's it for today. I hope this was very helpful for you, kind of understanding kind of how our process works and how we use various technologies for our business and for a podcast. I know a lot of you I've met before, and whether it's at an event or maybe via Facebook, and you're like, I don't know how you do a daily podcast and have 4 kids. My wife and I have 4 kids. We have a 8-year-old. Well, she's going to be 8 in 2 days. So I have an 8-year-old. We also have a 6-year-old boy. And then I have 2 younger children as well, younger than those 2, one that's 2 years old. And then I have another one that is right at about 10 months old now. So we're very busy from the family side of things. We have multiple businesses going on. But the biggest thing with being able to handle multiple businesses and not being stressed out all the time and being able to sleep at night is to use tools to your advantage like that. Do each one of these software pieces cost me money? Yes. But the amount of time, energy, and headspace that it relieves for me is worth every penny that each one of those is charging me. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back again on next Friday to talk about some other things that are happening in our businesses right now.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.